All right, let's settle a classic debate, one you've probably had before. What's actually worse for you, a cigarette, a joint, or a bong? You hear it all the time, right? Oh, cannabis is natural, so it's got to be safer. But then you have the undeniable dangers of tobacco. Well, today, we're going to cut through all that smoke and get straight to the facts.
So let's just put the question right out there. Which of these is the biggest health risk? Now, the answer isn't as simple as just pointing a finger and saying, that's the bad one. The risks are actually pretty different for each, and you really have to understand them to see the full picture. So let's peel back the layers and start with what you're actually breathing into your lungs.
To really figure out the danger, first we got to understand what we're inhaling. Because it turns out the real enemy isn't just the plant itself, it's the fire. It's the simple act of burning something and breathing in the smoke. Let's break down what that combustion really creates. Okay, let's start with the classic villain in this story, cigarette smoke. And it's not just smoke, it's a literal chemical cocktail. We're talking over 7,000 different chemicals. You've got nicotine, which is insanely addictive, tar, that sticky black gunk that just cakes your lungs, and carbon monoxide, which literally starves your blood of oxygen. And the scariest part? A whole bunch of these things, like formaldehyde and benzene, are proven to cause cancer. So what about a joint? A lot of people figure, hey, it's just a plant, so it's clean. Well, not so fast. Remember what we said about fire being the problem? That applies here too. Joint smoke has many of the same villains as cigarette smoke. And get this, because joints are unfiltered and people tend to smoke them all the way down, some studies show they can dump even more tar into your lungs than a regular cigarette. So let's be crystal clear, natural does not mean harmless.
And that brings us to the bong. The water filtration. That's supposed to make it safer, right? Well, kinda, but not really. It does cool the smoke, which makes it feel smoother and less harsh, but, and this is a huge but, it does not filter out the really bad stuff. That tar, the carbon monoxide, those tiny particles, they just bubble right on through the water and go straight into your lungs. On top of that, the whole point of a bong is to slam your system with a massive, concentrated dose of everything at once.
And this, right here, is the big aha moment. Take a look. For all their differences in what you're smoking or how you're smoking it, what do they all have in common? This nasty trio: tar, carbon monoxide, and fine particulate matter. It doesn't matter if the fuel is tobacco or cannabis. If you're burning it, you're inviting these guys in. Okay, so we know what's in the smoke. Now let's talk about what that smoke actually does to your body. We're going to zero in on the direct damage it causes to two of your most important organs, your lungs and your heart.
This chart really lays it all out. With cigarettes, the long-term devastation is just undeniable. They are the #1 cause of lung cancer and COPD, and they absolutely wreck your heart over time. Now, for joints, the damage is more about chronic, day-to-day irritation, that hacking cough you can't shake, constantly clearing your throat. That's your lungs being inflamed. For your heart, it causes a temporary spike in heart rate, which is a big deal if you already have a heart condition. And bongs, they bring a unique danger. Because the smoke feels smoother, people inhale way deeper and hold it longer, which can actually mean more tar buildup. And that massive sudden THC hit puts immediate, intense stress on the heart.
But the damage doesn't stop in your chest. The stuff you're inhaling goes straight from your lungs into your bloodstream and right to your brain. And that's where we get into a whole other area of concern: addiction and your ability to think clearly. Let's be perfectly blunt about this. Nicotine is an absolute beast. It isn't just addictive, it's one of the most powerfully addictive substances on the entire planet. It literally gets its hooks into your brain's reward system and rewires it, making it incredibly difficult to quit. Now, while it's true that cannabis isn't addictive in the same way as nicotine, the idea that you can't get hooked is a total myth. The data shows about 1 out of every 10 adult users develops what's called a cannabis use disorder. And for people who start using as teens, that number jumps up even higher. The risk is absolutely real. And beyond addiction, long-term cannabis use can have real consequences for how your brain actually works. We're talking about impacts on your memory, your ability to pay attention, and even your motivation. This is a huge deal for teenagers whose brains are still under construction. And this is where bongs pose another unique risk. By delivering such a high-potency dose, they can make your brain build up a tolerance way faster, which can speed up the slide toward dependence.
Okay, we've looked at what's in the smoke, we've looked at the physical damage, and we've looked at the effects on the brain. So it's time to bring it all together. Let's deliver the final verdict and see how these three really stack up against each other. So here it is, the final scorecard. When you're talking about the highest risk of deadly, long-term diseases and extreme addiction, cigarettes are, without question, the most dangerous overall. It's not really a contest. Joints are definitely harmful, causing serious lung irritation and posing real risks to your brain with heavy use, but they're not in that same league of lethality. And bongs? They're not a safe alternative. They just trade one set of risks for another, like the immediate stress on your heart and the heightened mental health risks that come from those super intense doses.
So after all of this, what's the single most important thing to take away? It's simple and it's undeniable. All smoke is harmful, period. The act of lighting something on fire and inhaling the byproduct is just fundamentally damaging to your body.
And that leads us to a very simple rule of thumb. If you want to reduce harm, the goal is to reduce your exposure to smoke. Less smoke equals less harm. And what does that mean? No smoke equals the least harm of all. It's a pretty straightforward principle.
Which leaves us with one last, big question to think about. If the fundamental problem, the real villain in this whole story, is the combustion itself, then is the whole debate about finding a better way to smoke completely missing the point?